whenever those folks who may not be able to get out very much.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I think that actually went out on broadcast.
That's great.
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. This was originally mentioned as a public meeting in regards to Committee of the Whole. And since then, with all the issues that are going on and the need to declare a state of emergency, as well as make some decisions on some things as far as operations with our staff and so forth, we're going to shift gears and make this a regular meeting of the board at this time. And we'll take some, make some decisions on items as well as discuss things. So in order to do that, it would be appropriate to have consensus from us.
She can have her radio on?
No, she has her screen on, so everything we say is getting repeated.
Jenny, can you turn the volume down on your screen? Or put your phone on mute? So it's coming across.
Jenny, could you see if you can reconnect with us on the telephone? Well, we know what the delay is anyway.
I turned it off.
Okay, you're back with us and have the other
Yeah.
source off. Okay, thank you. So at this time, would ask the board to consider agreeing to changing our agenda from the Committee of the Whole to a regular school board meeting. We've talked about this with our attorney.
That's
Not a school board.
School board. You can tell my background. We'll have a regular county board meeting. Thank you. So would someone like to make a motion in order to do that so we can attend to it?
I move.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw moves. Is there support? I will support it then. Any discussion? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Dukirk?
Yes.
Commissioner Storley?
Support.
And Bersheim, yes. So it passes. So the first agenda item then was just passed out, the resolution for declaring a state of emergency. I guess it'd be appropriate for me to read it for the public. This would be resolution number 20, resolution declaring a state of emergency. Whereas COVID-19 is a viral respiratory illness caused by a coronavirus that has not been found in people before. Whereas COVID-19 is an illness which is potentially fatal to older adults and people who have serious chronic medical conditions like heart disease, diabetes, and lung disease. Whereas coronavirus is known to spread rapidly among populations without preventative measures and rapid action by local authorities. Whereas Cook County has a higher than average population of older adults, a higher than average level of movement across its borders related to Cook County's tourism industry and its seasonal population. Whereas preventing the rapid spread of coronavirus and related fatalities among the Cook County population and its visitors requires swift action by the Cook County Board of Commissioners, its staff, and Cook County public officials. Whereas Cook County has already been required to purchase and will continue to purchase necessary equipment, software, and other technological resources to allow for teleworking and the provision of essential services to its citizens and visitors without increasing the risk of transmission of the coronavirus. Whereas Cook County anticipates being required to expend additional financial resources to prevent the spread of coronavirus and make related communications, and for providing essential services to individuals in quarantine and isolation as a result of exposure to the coronavirus or testing positive for the virus or COVID-19 illness. Whereas the Cook County Department of Emergency Management requests the Cook County Board of Commissioners to declare Cook County in a state of emergency during the COVID-19 outbreak in Cook County of March 2020. And this was attested by our Rena Rogers, our county administrator interim. So with that, I would entertain a motion to.
This is Heidi, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Dukirk makes the motion.
Support.
Support from Commissioner DeShaw. Have a roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw?
Are we going to have a discussion?
Oh, excuse me, discussion, yes, thank you.
With this resolution, how long does this state of emergency stay in effect?
Can you come up to the microphone, Mr. Capeward, if you're going to respond?
I am not certain the answer to that question unless Molly would have some input.
The state of emergency would be in effect until the COVID outbreak is no longer active. I mean, it's right now, it's indefinite because there is no way to predict when its effect on our community will end.
Commissioner Bersheim here. I would assume that we would follow the state on that, and so I think that would be the logical conclusion because the trigger was the state.
Yes, most likely, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do we got to put that, should we put that in this resolution?
That's up to our county attorney. I don't think it would be, but unless you think it's important, you'd maybe could amend it, but I would address that to her.
I don't think it's required, so I wouldn't recommend adding any limitation at this point. If you consider that an individual county can declare a state of emergency based on the effect of some disaster or pandemic on the specific county without the state having declared it, then logically, if the effect of the COVID outbreak were to, in Cook County, were to outlast the general effect on the state, there might be a situation where we would want our declaration of emergency to remain in effect longer than the state, if that makes sense.
Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we'll go for a roll call. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Dukirk?
Yes.
Commissioner Story?
Yes.
Bersheim, yea. It passes. Unanimous. Okay?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I noticed that we don't have a secretary here. Could I just take note of who made the motion and who seconded it?
Would you like me to go get Stacy so she could?
I think if we're taking action, it would be good for her to be here. Who made the motion?
I did.
Commissioner Dukirk,
Who seconded it?
Commissioner DeShaw.
Thank you. And it was all
All
ayes.
ayes.
Okay.
We will wait to have someone that can record the meeting.
It'll take a while for that. We can just continue to record who makes the motion until she gets here.
I was going to call on, I'll make a change then. So you have before you, and I believe that Commissioner Storley received something by email, and we'll take action then on Cook County, Minnesota Advanced Sick Leave Policy and the temporary teleworking policy. And we have with us Pamela Dixon, our HR Director. Do you have any comments that you would like to make and present, or? And then we'll take action on that.
I just wanted to make sure that if you had any questions or concerns about the policies in front of you, that we could have that discussion.
Okay, so we'll
You
open
should
it up.
have the advanced sick leave policy. The purpose is for those employees who have exhausted their paid leave, have access to sick leave. And this is inclusive of state of emergencies like we're experiencing now, but broader in application, so that any type of sick leave that is needed, we can refer to this policy. The temporary teleworking policy, similarly, in response to the state of emergency, making sure that those who can and have the ability to work from home can do so. This was written in a way that addresses that, but also maintains a bit broader in the cases where employees are traveling or working out of a satellite location on a temporary basis. It is not intended to be a benefit to employees or seen as a benefit or an entitlement. It is simply on a temporary basis when needed and approved.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments that someone would like to make to Ms. Dixon?
Chairman Bershon?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, the clarification on maximum hours. The county may advance up to 112 hours or 14 days. We're going to be beyond 14 days, so how will that work?
Right now, they're saying the gestation period for coronavirus is within that 14-day period of time. And so, as a beginning, I used that as the criteria for putting the number of hours, so that if I am symptomatic, I can take sick leave and know that I can be covered for the duration of that period of time where the disease would gestate.
Okay, thank you.
The other
Yeah.
thing to consider
Go ahead.
is that right now, if an employee is with us under 5 years, they annually will have 21 days of paid leave. If we're advancing sick leave that would be paid back from their accrued paid leave, we want to make sure that we're not advancing more than an employee would get in a year. So that was also part of my consideration. So if we do choose to increase from 14 days, we would want to be mindful of that.
Any other questions, comments?
So are we approving two different things here?
We'll do it, well, first of all, if you'd like to make a motion on anything, we'll start with the advanced sick leave policy first. We'll have to have a motion on each and pass each one.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion for the advanced sick leave policy.
Support.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call, Commissioner DeShawn?
Yep.
Commissioner Dukirk?
Yes.
Commissioner Starley?
Support.
And Bershheim is aye, so all ayes passes. Then we'll go to the temporary teleworking policy. If there's no more questions, we'll entertain a motion on that.
Support that.
Okay, Commissioner Shaw makes a motion.
Support.
Support Commissioner Dukirk. Any other questions, comments? Okay, and roll call, Commissioner DeShaw?
Commissioner Bershheim, I had a
Oh,
question.
excuse me, go ahead.
Pam, do either one of these cover what I sent you this morning that pertains specifically to emergency staff?
These policies do not. I do have drafted, if these were to pass, I have drafted and will send out to the MAT team as well as the commissioners, teleworkers and workers' compensation, Fair Labor Standards Act, and Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. Those are the three pieces of legislation that would have implications for that policy. So I do have supporting documentation for that I would follow up with.
Okay, I just want to make
Okay.
sure that didn't get missed.
It did
Okay.
not. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Commissioner Dukirk. Okay, roll call, Commissioner DeShaw?
Yep.
Commissioner Dukirk?
Yes.
Commissioner Starley?
Support.
Commissioner Bershheim, aye. All ayes. Passes. This time, I'd like to get an update from our interim administrator, and then we'll go on to some other business items after that. Again, I think it'd be an opportune time to really thank everyone from the board for all the work that they're doing during this difficult times. Our Emergency Management Director, Mike Keyport, and Grace Grenadier, as I mentioned earlier, and definitely our interim administrator and our county attorney, who spent a lot of time yesterday, and I know that the work that they've been doing. Yes.
Because our newly appointed secretary here doesn't have a copy of the agenda, she's having trouble keeping track of where we are right now, so could you repeat?
Sure, yes. Okay, so we took care of the first of all, we took action to conduct business at this meeting because it was announced as the committee of the whole. And there was all ayes. State of emergency, all ayes. And now we're going to have an update. Then we took action, on the sick leave policy, which came in.
Yes, I got that.
And teleworking.
Jumped into another thing, which I have no idea.
Temporary teleworking policy.
You have that.
Temporary teleworking policy.
This is this one.
We
And now
also
we're-
have a teleworking checklist. Are we supposed to approve that, or is that just for our information?
I didn't see that. Is it part of the policy?
It was a separate piece of paper I have.
Okay.
Bobby has it. That has it.
To my knowledge, in our discussion yesterday, we were not taking action on anything
this?
but those two items.
But we were given this, so I'm just
I
wondering.
would assume it's part of the policy,
Okay,
yeah.
so we're not taking action.
And we could clarify that, but I would assume,
It's probably with this.
Oh, here we go. I had two
Right.
copies of it.
Yeah, that's part of it.
it's part of the
It is.
teleworking
This
policy.
is excuse me, Mr. Chair, but when employees, right, when employees are sent home to telework, they will be given a copy of this policy. They will be asked to agree to it, the terms of it, because there are things that employees are expected to do and they need to understand about their own responsibility. And part of that is this checklist that makes sure that they're safe and working safely and protecting the privacy of our data and on and on and on of things that they normally do at work, but now they'll be doing it at home. So it's more of a checklist for them.
Okay.
Okay,
So they do have to sign off on it.
Mm-hmm. It's part of signing off, I think, on the policy itself.
Okay.
okay. So we'll continue then with an update from our interim administrator on the state of affairs right now.
State of affairs right
Bev,
now.
I don't think we're following any agenda, so.
I don't know.
No.
I don't know if this, I saw something this morning that said it's like our current environment's being written by a fourth grader, There's a bad virus, everybody got sick, we ran out of toilet paper, school's canceled for a month, and then it snowed. It sort of feels that way right now. I think been doing a lot of time, a lot of conversations with staff, a lot of conversations with directors, trying to be honest about the situation and trying to maintain levels of calmness at the same time. I think the two things that we're focused on are, number one, the safety and well-being of our employees, I think is certainly at the top of my list. And second of all, how do we continue to, while keeping our employees safe, how do we continue to deliver services which are critical to members of the community and that we're responsible for, and knowing full well that some of the essential services we provide are going to become even more in demand, particularly from our social services area. So as I think Allison mentioned in the previous meeting, we sent out a tool to all of our directors, asking them to think through in their departments two things. One, what are your essential services? And when you define those essential services, but really a list of all of your services and then prioritizing them from 1 to 4. One being essential, like they have to be available all the time. Dispatch is a good example of that. Network and network security is an example of a priority 1 service. Priority 2 services would be things that need to be processed within a day to a week. So some of those things have to do with statutory things or other, they just need to be processed that quickly, and that varies department to department. Things that would fall in that category would be board agendas, for example, getting those out in a timely way. The next priority would be things that can be put off between a week and a month. And then priority 4 would be things that can be put off indefinitely. They're more housekeeping things, they're projects that are not essential, those sorts of things. So asking department heads to look at the things that they do, that their staff does, and give them a priority rating, and then really consider whether that could be done remotely or whether it has to be done here. We also asked them to do an inventory of all of their employees, how they line up with those services, and who backs up an individual employee. As you know, we're mostly one deep, but if that employee were to get sick or would not be able to work, who would be the person that could do that job? And then last, what capabilities do they have at home? Do they have broadband at home so they would be able to work from home? So with that information, we've been working our way, I've been working my way through departments, meeting with people and having conversations. I've been working with my other hat on with the IT staff, and we've ordered a number of laptops and finding ways to get people who are not used to working at home set up to work at home. I think in a lot of ways we're well equipped to do that because we have good tools and a lot of stuff that over the last few years we've bought as subscription services, or they're in a cloud, or they're accessible through an internet connection rather than you have to be here to do it. Good example is our email is that way. And along with our Office 365 subscriptions, we also get Skype for Business. So what that means, and it's really important, it's a change in culture, but Skype allows people to do phone calls, it allows them, group phone calls, meetings, it allows them to instant message each other, it allows them to do video calls. All of that's recorded so it can become part of public data. But it also is the way, I think, over the next however long, maybe several months, we can maintain community if we're, and the relationships that we have in the office, the person that you see every day, you can do a video call with them and just check in with them just in the same way that you would at the office. So some of this is a learning curve, and we're trying to make sure everybody is aware of it and knows how to do it. For people who can't work away, that absolutely the work that they do has to be done here. There's a couple of notable positions like that in the auditor's office, and because of the amount of checks that come in paper, they have to be here to process those. The recorder's office is another example of that. Some of our financial workers upstairs. We're trying to create social distancing by multiple shifts, maybe spreading them around for people to different locations for people who are able to work at home. So looking at some of those things, then the next priority really is how do we keep the public mostly out of the courthouse? And I'm anxious to hear, because I know that with court admin, it sounds like we can't shut the courthouse down, but we can certainly do things that say to people, before you walk in, call this office, call your office, the office that you were planning to just walk in on, and see, first of all, if the person you wanted to see is even here, if they're telecommuting. Maybe you need to make an appointment, maybe your question can be answered over the phone, maybe we can mail you the form you were looking for. So that's one thing that we need to I'll start getting the messaging out to the community yet today. It'll be in the newspaper, and hopefully I'll talk to Joe about that on the radio. We'll get it on the website as well. The other thing is just looking at all of our meetings. Are they essential? Is there some business that needs to be enacted, before the next time you meet? Is there something critical? Like this morning, for example, Allison said, I have several things that I need board action on. So that was not an option to postpone that meeting. And I think many of our meetings are kind of project, long-term, so some of those things just may have to be put on hold. We do have options for Skype meetings, which some of us have already participated in, And the technology we're using this morning, which if I had sent the right phone number, Heidi would have been able to call in, but I mistyped it. It's a conferencing account that we can get through the state that allows us to have conference calls where multiple people from organizations can call in. And we're working with the state to get several more of those accounts in place. And we're only charged for those when we use them. So that will help set up some of these meetings that need to go on. So those are some of the things we're doing in the short term. Once we get people working where they need to be working, then we can work on how do we do department meetings and encouraging our directors to use the tools that they have to manage their employees in a new way that they haven't done before. So anybody has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them, or if you have any comments or ideas, I'm looking forward to more ideas too.
Commissioner Dukert?
I just got the number from Pam on our Sand Creek. If we could send out that phone number to the staff and just remind them that they do have the option of 4 free services during this time, this would definitely count as.
That went to all staff,
Okay.
Did it? Good.
that email.
Okay.
Yep, at 10:22.
Yay.
Okay, any other questions, comments for Commissioner Shaw?
As far as the, us as a group, we're going to continue meeting on our regular schedule.
That's a good question. I think we can, and probably there is business that the county needs to conduct. And so what I learned yesterday is that through teleconferencing, we basically, every one of you could be at home. We just need one person here, and we would keep the video camera on that one person or whatever. So, and that one person does not necessarily have to be a board member. It could be Brady or myself or Molly. So we may want to choose to have a conversation about committees of the whole, for example, make those more scarce. But I guess I see a need for us, as we move through this, to have the board meeting once or twice a month, just to make sure that business can keep going through. There is business that's still happening, and if we keep employees working, there will be agenda items. So however you all want to do that, we'll make that work.
Yeah, I would think that the option of calling in would be, I think suitable, and stick to our regular schedule, and quite frankly, we may have to declare emergency meetings. I think we have a process of meeting Monday mornings to sort of get a group of people together to see what's going on and what needs to be attended to. And I think that process would more than likely indicate the need, and I think our interim administrator definitely, along with the board chair, have that discretion to call a meeting or not, and I think we should keep that.
Chairman Bersham?
Yes.
Well, I just want to thank Rena for all of the above that she has indicated that she's going to be working on, and I think we do have to take this meeting at a time and look at the agenda and see what's really important. So I did not know that at times someone else could fill in, and maybe that day will come too. So I appreciate all of that, and as she gets more information on all of this, I know she'll pass it on. So thanks again, Rena.
Thank you,
Okay.
Commissioner Storley.
Let's start with Commissioner Deschamps.
I know this changes hour by hour, day by day, hour by hour. I'm just hoping that we're not going to get to the point where we're going to burn Mike out or Grace out. Do we see a need for getting some assistance for them? Mm-hmm. If you're working on this 7 days a week, when are you going to burn out? That's a lot of information to take in every day and try to make a decision on it there. I don't know if Mike wants to speak up on this. If you...
He's been training his whole life for this to happen.
Not this.
I look forward to the ice storm this week, because that's easier to deal with. Regionally, we are considering opening up a regional EOC, so we can all check in with our partners out there and to see what we can do to help each other. Some of the bigger counties, Carleton and St. Louis, have a much larger public health and human services departments. They have more bodies to deal with it when so if need be, I might be able to reach out and get some extra help for myself from that group, and then we're meeting every other day, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays virtually. So that's my one support that I have through the region. But
Yeah, because I think if we get a confirmed case in the county there, that's gonna go to a whole new level then, and and hopefully panic don't set in and people are civil with each other.
Right. So, Mike, this morning Grace mentioned that she heard something last night, that somebody was in a category in this county.
Quarantine, which is not
Quarantine.
tested positive. It's-
Which is, they were tested, is that, but they haven't tested positive yet?
I do not know that.
They were in contact
information.
with someone, and so they're
Okay.
on quarantine for 14 days.
Okay, I didn't,
But they have not tested positive.
okay.
You-
I was just wanting to clarify that because
Down here to join this conversation.
I just wanted to clarify, that's all. I don't know that we
Question,
need to.
Commissioner Shaw was wondering if Grace should be here, but I don't know if we can do that. But it
And she
definitely,
come back down here to join this conversation.
I'll-
I think it's important. that
I'll
we do
text
have
her.
it.
sure.
And see if we can get her.
Yeah, I think she would be the better person to clarify that for us.
Yeah, I just concerned, and I don't want you guys to get overwhelmed, and, like I say, I'm sure the information changes by the hour, so.
If I could just comment on that, I think since we've declared a state of emergency, that we would be able to, access funding more than likely from the state if we declared that we need to do this. So your point is well taken, and I guess my question would be, what would be the trigger? And I guess she would be part of that, as well as, Allison, the department head, and as well as our interim administrator. So, the issue is, can we find someone, or do we have someone on staff that, could do that? And that would be a question, I think, that would be addressed to the department as well. Health and Human Services seems to be the closest place to it, where if we could reassign someone if needed. And I would assume that they would maybe do that. I don't, especially under the state of emergency, but that'd be a question for Attorney Hicken.
You're asking about hiring somebody additional?
Well, let's say hypothetically that let's say we have to provide another staff member help with information kind of thing, and that maybe Grace is doing. And how would we go about that, considering the state of emergency declaration?
What the declaration of emergency does is it makes all expenses related to the outbreak potentially reimbursable by the federal government. I would assume that a hire like that would be compensable, but I can't predict whether it would or not, and it would depend on, I wonder if the answer is to delegate duties differently among existing staff.
I guess that's what I was leading to, and my point of view is that the funding of this is not the crucial issue. The crucial issue is providing the service and support, and we can always figure out how to pay for it, I think, in emergency situations. So I don't know if she can come down. Did anyone try to contact her?
I texted her, but I have no idea if she's in another meeting
Right.
or not.
Okay, so I guess that's something that we could direct our staff to take a look at and report back to us or take action, and could be a definite agenda item in the future.
I think, you know, one of the challenges that we'll have, and we have to watch going forward, is that we are one deep on a lot of skill sets. So if somebody does get sick or they have a family member that's sick and they're out for a while, how do we keep doing those services that person provides? And that's where we may need to have emergency help or look to other counties or leverage some of those things. That's why the exercise of looking at what has to be done when, from our essential services point of view, is really important, so that, you know, you have something, it's information that's right in front of you. What's the impact of this person being out? So that's good information for department heads to make those kinds of decisions. I would guess that there'll be decisions like that made along the way as we get through this.
Commissioner Dukirk?
What's going on with BJ in Lake County? Have you touched base with her, or has it just been too busy?
No, she's been on our regional calls, and basically they're kind of mimicking what everybody else has been doing as to working with public health to make sure everything's in place as to isolation and quarantine should we get a case up here. Jim Weenan, I'm sure you all know him, did reach out to myself, BJ, and the St. Louis County emergency manager, saying that if there's anything he can do, that he's willing to help us. So that is an option for us too.
And he's not the only emergency manager we have in our community, so we're kind of lucky on that part. BJ historically has been not full-time, so I assume that they're moving her full-time for this situation.
I don't know that, but
Yeah, just as a support for our area.
I do know that, you know, it was reported to us that our public health coordinator is working with the clinic, and I think they're really teaming up a lot too, so that may be a source of support. So here she is.
So Bobby, are you considering that we just post to fill a part-time position at this point?
I just want to make sure that we're like a step ahead of it, you know.
Right.
If you feel like you need help, that we can just act on it, or it's ready to go.
Grace, I guess we'd asked you to come down because we're discussing how we can provide support to Mike or you in regards to your responsibilities. And I know you mentioned you're working with the clinic. And I guess the direct question is, are there some things that we could do? Are there some things that can be done in the department that you would need our support on in regards to providing support if it's needed?
Sure. I think that because all of this has evolved so quickly, that a big part of my task right now is to figure out exactly what support that I need, and I'm still in the process of figuring that out. The announcement by the state yesterday that we can use that Minnesota Responds volunteer network, I think, is something I'm very hopeful about for providing direct essential services for people in isolation quarantine, getting folks who are not at high risk, who want to be helping, doing things like running errands and dropping off meals. I think that is the first strategy that I'd like to pursue, and that I can imagine becoming one of the most time and resource intensive parts of this for public health, is to help provide those essential services. Another piece that I've done some initial reaching out to the local lodging community is that essential services also includes lodging. So if there is a tourist who's in our community, or anyone in our community who doesn't have a home that they can be in isolation and quarantine, we would need to work with our partners in the lodging industry to help provide that to a person. And so what that looks like, what that means, I know that's something that other counties have struggled with, because it can be something that's seen as a risk to a business, but there is really clear guidance as to how to really eliminate that risk by proper cleaning and all of that. But I think when it comes time that I need to reach out to the lodging community to try to make those arrangements, that might be an area that I look for support. I don't know whether it will be from the commissioners, but that's an area that I'm actively working on right now.
I think, well, go ahead.
I think that the links and support that I'm getting from the clinic right now are really crucial, and that within PHHS, as we do our continuity of operations planning, depending on what staff workloads look like, if anyone has more time available, I think the first thing I would like to do would be to try to pull some existing staff into response. But again, this is all evolving so quickly, it's hard to know exactly what we're going to need. But I think that providing essential services, that's going to be really a key focus.
So I think from a board perspective, then your approach right now is to do what you can with the resources you have and
Yes,
and the
and
contacts
I will not
and
hesitate to
collaborations.
reach out if there comes a point where we need to move past that. But I think both using staff we have right now, our partnership with the clinic, and volunteers is the strategy that I'm developing.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, with the thing that I had you come down for is, I'll just repeat what I asked Mike, is, you know, if it starts to get overwhelming because you're getting so much information, definitely let us know in any way we can help, so whether you need
Thank you.
assistance or.
You just want to call one of us and let it vent.
Know who to call.
Sounds
Thank you.
good.
Any other comments, or? Thanks so much for what you do, and
Yeah.
it's your
Yeah,
work.
absolutely. It's an honor to be in this role, even though it's a situation I know none of us really want to find ourselves in right now. I feel very fortunate that we have strong partnerships within the community and strong support from the commissioners as well.
Good. Thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments in regards to operations for our administrator?
I actually have a question for Attorney Hicken. I'm just wondering, what is our capability, or how much can we shut down the courthouse? I know that we have court admin, and so there's the state responsibility to do court services, but what are our options there?
There's been a court order issued by the Chief Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court, Chief Justice Gilday, which orders that court hearings, court proceedings in priority and high priority cases, and there's a list of that, need to proceed as scheduled. All cases not in those categories should be rescheduled. And their jury trials are delayed, and there are details in that order regarding jurors and panel jurors or jury duty. So it's all addressed. Because court operations occur in this building, I think the building does need to be open for the purposes of those court hearings that continue. The court hearings remain public in nature, but there is some language in the order about restricting from attendance people at high risk of having contracted the coronavirus. So I think it depends on which services we're talking about, but we do provide essential services out of this building. I think especially Public Health and Human Services is going to need to require those services in person on some, in some circumstances. So this is why it was essential for us to start working on our continuity of operations plans departmentally weeks ago, thanks to Interim Administrator Rogers' urging. So there are some services that require the courthouse to remain open. That doesn't mean individual offices couldn't control their hours of operation, their hours of public access. depending on what role they play in providing essential services. I know in my office, we don't have a very regular customer service type role. We don't provide in-person services to members of the public. We mainly provide services to other entities like court, probation, the sheriff's office, the commissioners, public health and human services. So we're finding a way to limit the ways that we provide those services so that they're still accessible, but we're not adding to the capability of this virus to spread.
So what I've been thinking about, if we can't physically lock the doors, is asking the public, if you were planning to come to the courthouse, if you felt like you needed to conduct business here, to call that office first. It's possible that somebody, if you're looking for a form, that could be mailed to you, or that form is available online. If you were planning to come in to meet with somebody, say, for example, in our land services office, to call ahead and make an appointment, because it's possible that person is not even here if you're just dropping in, so that kind of casual exposure again. And if you make an appointment, then the person could schedule like the ITV room or a room that's less confined than their offices to meet with people. And again, a lot of business can be conducted over the phone. And then even for offices like the recorder's office, I was having a conversation with Dusty this morning and Holly about looking at, they have people that come in regularly, from the title companies and that sort of thing. Can those things just be mailed in? Can they just say, I'm bringing something over, and meet them at the door and get that information and not have people coming on in and touching things and things that we have to keep sterilizing? So there are things that we can do, and I'm hoping, I'm going to probably today, when I get some time, write an article that explains all of that for the newspaper for this week's county connections, and I always get that one mixed up. County connections, and also hopefully get on the radio and talk about that, and have departments start reinforcing that. Just minimize the amount of the public that's here as much as we can, for the health of our employees and for the health of the public. So one of the other things we're looking at, Brian's checking into it, is about getting a mail slot up by our front door. So when people bring in their tax payments or other things that they need to just deliver, we'll just go into a lockbox, and then people don't even need to come in. And that's kind of a feature that people, I think, will appreciate on court days when they're dropping something off and they don't want to come through security. So it'll be a permanent feature. So looking at all kinds of ways to keep the traffic in this place minimum. I think the other message that I would give to people, if you want to make public comments at a meeting, send me an email or mail those comments to me, and they will be read during the meeting. I'm not sure that we can stop that, but I think we can certainly encourage it. So any other ideas that people have, like I said, I'm interested in any input.
Okay. Another agenda item that we thought we should bring before you is sort of a courtesy to DDA, Human Resources. They sent us all a memo, and we can just discuss this. We don't have to take action, or we could take action on it. I guess that is up to this group. But I won't read the entire memo, but I think for the public, I'll just summarize it with some key statements that were written to us. It's from Gary Wires. Wears or Wires?
Wires.
Wires, okay. To Cook County Board of Commissioners, March 16th. I'm writing with an update pertaining to the hiring process for the Cook County Administrator. As you know, the current timeline for the remaining steps in the process is to select finalists on March 24th, 2020, next week, and conduct interviews of those finalists on April 20th, 2020. With fast-moving COVID-19 situation, it is worth examining the process and also considering options. I'm not advocating a course adjustment. I simply want to articulate that there are options should the board wish to modify the process. There are 3 options that come to mind at present. The first is to proceed as planning. The second is to put the process on hold for a brief period of time. And the third is to put the process on hold for a bit and then re-advertise and proceed again through the process. We'll try to provide some insight regarding the benefits and concerns of the various options. Option 1, continuing as planning. I guess the benefit of that is obviously is the timeliest, with the position being filled in a relatively short period of time. Concerns are, what additional directives are going to be happening? How is it going to be disrupted? Can the candidates, where are they able to travel? Process of an administrator is a public process, and that might not be possible with the current situations, especially with some of the action that's happening at the state and now with our own emergency declaration. And because of the emergency planning taking place, this may not be the ideal time for a new administrator to be hired. Option 2 to hold is somewhat similar, except that here again, if you're running a risk of, people would withdraw if you delay it, and I guess that would be the one that would pertain to that. But then again, you don't know what's going to happen in the next process. The option 3 is restart the advertising in several months. He had an outline, which would be to start that process in June. And the completion date could be in October. And I guess I'll just read the benefits and concerns for that one. Benefits: the position was initially advertised on January 15th, 2020, so having a new advertisement would make sense since many months will have lapsed since the initial advertising of the position. The candidate pool could change in that time period, which means there could be new qualified candidates. This establishes a degree of certainty. The process stops now, and the county operations move forward without disrupting during this challenging time. Concerns about that would be it is likely that some of the current candidates would no longer be available or interested, and the organization would be without a permanent administrator for several more months. I'm attaching an updated timeline and so forth. I think the important consideration here to conclude it is that there would be no additional costs incurred by the county for any of these options. The situation we find ourselves in is unprecedented, so having to alter the plan is not going to result in the county incurring additional costs. So that he can meet with us next week. He'd be willing to do that by video conferencing or come in person. I think we wouldn't recommend that, but maybe video conferencing. But I think at this time, I would just like to open it up for discussion and questions in regards to that memo. And we do have the option just not to do anything and forward this to next month. But I think we definitely should, in courtesy to him, let him know at least some of our thinking. So with that, Commissioner DeShaw?
When is Commissioner Mills going to be back?
Well, he's in quarantine. Well, I don't know even if he's back, but my understanding is that he and his family will be in quarantine, so maybe he'll be able to attend by phone, but in the next couple of weeks. But that remains to be determined.
You should be able to attend by phone next week.
I would assume so, if all things go well.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, there is a distinction between being asked to quarantine yourself and being ordered into quarantine. The information I have is that there's a request that he and his family quarantine themselves at this point. There's no order, and I just wanted to make sure that's clear in the record.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe just put this on next week's agenda for information or something until Dave can
Sure.
be in on the conversation with us.
Would you like?
I guess,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, the question is, we have an agenda that we are going to proceed with the evaluations and actually score the candidates, that we're requested to do that by next week. And so I think we would be helpful to know that if we're going to just go ahead with that, or are we going to just have this as an agenda item to talk about it further and delay it at least a week? Commissioner Dukirk?
We received that information over a week ago. I'm done with mine. I know that another commissioner asked me how to open the videos, so I think that they've watched them. We did not discuss anything to do with the candidates, just how to make the video work. I think we should proceed, and I think that Bobby is correct, that Dave should be a part of this discussion about what are we going to do next. So next week, we have Gary on the phone, we have our evaluations ready in case we decide to proceed, and we have Dave involved in the conversation.
I agree with that.
Commissioner Starling, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I've completed mine, and so I think it would be a good time to at least discuss it next week and see how we all feel, rather than to postpone it way out. We might lose good candidates. However, I know Rena, in the position that she's in too, it's consideration for her, but I think for now, we just move ahead for another week and discuss it then, do our evaluation, and see where we are with that.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, we just will let it go next week and evaluate the candidates, and then are we going ahead with the assumption, and this is a question, that we're going to continue with, and that would be option one?
We're not going to do any assumptions until Dave's part of the conversation.
Okay. All right. So going forward, the first item agenda next week will be to discuss whether we continue with the process or not, and then proceed. I just need a clarification on that.
Yes.
Okay.
For the third time.
Excuse me, what was your comment?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. So that's how we'll proceed. And I think then we'll discuss the pros and cons of these three options and then decide how to proceed. Just make sure that the public understands how we're going to proceed. Okay. Anything else that needs to be addressed? Commissioner comments or concerns? Okay. That we will adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jenny.
Jenny.
I sent April a picture of this.
Just for future reference, if somebody gets pulled in, you should probably kind of stop and fill that person in on where they are in the minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
Because
Yeah.
that was a little brutal. Somebody's not